Hello, it's Natty again. It's been a few weeks since I made the problem with the manosphere video, and I feel like I need have more to say now, especially because since then I have been spending a lot of time on Twitter. Um, I'm about 39 weeks pregnant, and last weekend I started to have some prodromal contractions, which is like kind of early labor contractions, and they don't really do much. They're just kind of like your body getting warmed up. But sometimes they're also a warning that you're going to go into labor. So I was ordered to rest by my family, and I got people looking after my kids, and then other things that I've been doing, I've sort of finished. So been twiddling my thumbs, staying up, going on Twitter, and boy, it's been fun. It's not fun, but I have engaged with a lot of people, and I think there's a few arguments and points that I keep coming up against that I feel the need to push back on and discuss. So here we go. Um, all right. So I spoke about the manosphere and how I think that um, one of the biggest issues is that they don't really believe in repentance for women. They keep pushing it back onto women and saying, you know, you guys made your bed, lie in it, that type of thing. Those are the ones that are really angry who say things like that. But there is an underlying sense that um, that they kind of want women to just suffer a bit. And at the end of my video, I was talking about how we all just need to forgive each other because we've all been manipulated in an equal manner, just in different ways. Which kind of relates to my first point. So, one of the arguments that is made in the manosphere is the feminization of society as a whole. Now, when I used to do more men's rights stuff, I completely agree with that. I agree that our society, our Western culture, has been feminized and the kind of active masculine principle has been suppressed in a way that it wasn't before feminism. And now we have governments, institutions, media, all parts of our culture and our infrastructure more feminized. And young boys have been brought up in school by feminized teachers and teaching methods, and they're all becoming like soy boy feminist harpies, basically. Well, or at least appeasing of them. Now, I don't disagree with any of that. What I do disagree with, however, is the way it's used online, especially in places like Twitter. The argument is simplified down. So the argument is society's been feminized, and if we just made it more masculine or defeminized it, then pretty much we would solve our problems. And the underlying presumption there is that the feminization of society is what's causing Western society to collapse in the way it is, to rot in the way it is. And that's kind of about it, because everything else is maybe a domino effect after that. And I just don't agree with that. And I find it really interesting that people get so attracted to these kind of one-sided, polarized arguments, because my understanding, even as it before I when I came into being a men's rights activist, was that we all understood that men are flawed. Humanity is fallen. I'm a Christian, so I'm going to use Christian terminology. Humanity is fallen. Both men and women are fallen together. We're in this together, right? We understood that. But because we have this underlying gynocentrism, and then women started to get more political power, etc., and influence in the public sphere they didn't have before, Um, we all sort of believed that women were kind of naive and they were acted upon, and men were the actors. And then we sort of discovered that actually women are just as flawed as men and they have immoral tendencies just like men do. But what's sort of happening now, with this feminization argument being one example of it, is the idea that if everything that is going wrong with society is because it's being feminized, therefore, the feminine, there's something inherently wrong with the feminine, right? And never mind the fact that feminism isn't necessarily an expression of the feminine. You could say it's toxic femininity, um, but this argument is sort of has this underlying current of, well, the feminine can't be trusted. There's something wrong with it, right? But they are expressing this argument in a way that, okay, we give it back to the masculine, then everything is fine. And it's like, I thought we all agreed many years ago that men were flawed too. So how would things be fine? I mean, yeah, we wouldn't have feminism. Great. But apart from that, like what why do you think that that is just this, like it sort of translates into this whole thing where um then you get people saying things like, well, men are more moral. And I'm like, hang on a minute. This has never been the conclusion that the past, like in society, we've never made that conclusion that men are more moral than women. That's never been a thing ever. Like the trads, that they've never said men are more moral than women. This is a new thing. This is a reactionary position. Um, it's not it's not a sort of principled position, and it's dangerous. um, I just have to say it. It is dangerous, and I'm quite concerned about it. Right? Um, because men are not more moral than women. I mean, at this present time, there are certain areas where women have more power over men, just in the sense that they can probably make false accusations, and the police has bias. If you make a false accusation where you're going to be believed, in these certain areas, they have more power in this way. And then that's used as an example for where, oh, women will just take advantage of it. It's like, no, most women won't, but there are a minority of them that will. Yes, they're more incentivized to. And one of the arenas that this happens is where, like, say, a marriage breaks up and a woman is not very rich. She can't really afford to pay lawyers. And if she makes an accusation, she can get legal aid. This is in the UK, for example. She makes an accusation of domestic violence, she can get legal aid. And this, she basically will only get help and support from the state if she makes an accusation, right? Otherwise, she is on her own, pretty much, right? So, yes, there are incentives that could make certain women lean that way, and that is happening. Um, but that doesn't mean that overall women are more immoral or men are more moral than women. But unfortunately, this is the argument that I encounter online quite often. Um, there are those that won't always say it directly, but they will make statements that imply that. And this is where this feminization thing bothers me just a tad, because um, they are saying that if something is feminized, the feminine is a problem and it's bad. It's like, well, again, what benefits do women have? What feminine essence and the feminine principle, like, what is good about it. Then I get responses saying, well, men can just do everything women can. They could probably do it better. It's just that men can't have kids. It's like, oh, great. Way to go. Way to make women feel good about being women and being feminine. Because men are just superior to them in every way. It's just that they can't have babies, and so we have to sort of put up with them. That, unfortunately, seems to be the conclusion that a lot of these men are coming down to. And we really need to stop that because it's not helping anyone. And we're going down this route of androcentrism and chauvinism, which is going to become normalized. And in the past, we've had some bouts of chauvinism, but we didn't have a truly chauvinistic culture, at least not recently. Maybe you could argue some hundreds of years ago, but not in recent times. We kind of had a culture of mutual respect where both sexes were supposed to be cooperating and they're in this together. They're not in competition. It's not a whole thing about who's better overall and who's superior and who's more moral. Um, it's just uh, despairing that we've got to this point where that is the level of the discourse. Anyway, so I've spoken about feminization of society. Now, the point I'm getting to here is that there are other arenas, other ideas, and other bits of propaganda that men are prone to, and there's sort of philosophies that men are more attracted to than women that have been designed to appeal to men that I believe are quite dangerous and concerning for society. And I don't believe that they have anything to do with feminization. They have something to do with modernity, maybe liberalism, but they're not. They are not inherently feminist. And this is the kind of after the Industrial Revolution, and we get the kind of embracing of the machines, all these big machines we use to make everything, and that kind of make things more mechanized in society. And this type of thinking, this materialistic type of thinking, appealed to men more, right? And then we move into the 60s and we have the moon landing. And the moon landing is like this kind of existential new frontier. And, the message to men is that we've progressed. We've progressed from the Industrial Revolution, and now we can go to the Mars because we're going to colonize space because we've landed on the moon. And everyone needs to work together and do their part. We're all going to achieve this. And I'm just like, you guys don't seriously think that this is actually going to happen to you? And if it does happen, what benefit is it going to do for us? Why should we live on a pod on Mars? Why would we want to live in a space station? I mean, don't you understand that we're going to have to augment and change our bodies and our minds to achieve this? I believe that this is quite anti-humanity, anti-nature, not Christian. So I'm never gonna be supportive of it, and I think it's all a big fantasy. I think it's just another carrot, you know. And I believe that this has been promoted to appeal to men when they, and just like capitalism, which again, if you're expecting us to say, right, yeah, take away the feminization of society, great, and then you're just going to leave us with this fake, flawed capitalism that isn't really capitalism, but kind of is capitalism because capitalism was never really going to work because the free market has never truly existed because we've never really had a world where the free market could exist. I mean, these libertarian ideas that I used to be into, by the way, once you grow up a bit, you're like, okay, no. And these all appeal to men more than women. Even men that haven't studied political theory or philosophy they are attracted to these because they attach themselves to the masculine principle of action and competition, right? And you can't do any of that stuff in a moral manner unless it is through a Christian society and a Christian lens. If you don't have those ethics, then it just turns into what we have now, which is people like Elon Musk, sorry, trying to be, the Silicon Valley king of the world. We already have a king of the world, and his name is Charles, um, and who I'm not a fan of, by the way. Telling us that it's okay. We can be right wing and pro free speech or whatever, and a technocrat and transhumanist. And I'm telling you that most young men, especially, will fall for his rubbish, fall for his deception, because they're attracted to, the prospect of colonizing space or whatever. Yeah, having a society run by AI because it's better than humans. Um, all of that stuff is very male, or at least it's attractive to men. But I wouldn't say that it's an expression of holistic, fully formed masculinity. I would say it's like compartmentalized. It's very adolescent in nature. Um, and it's just naive. Um, it's evil, in my opinion. It's presenting to be something. It's saying it's neutral, and I don't believe any of it is neutral. Some people I know will be like, "Oh, it's just who owns it and who uses it," and I'm like, "No, it's not neutral. It wasn't created to be neutral. It's created to use us, and it's created to um, send us down a direction that is completely anti-human." Um, so I don't actually accept this argument that technology, or at least the transhumanist step that we are about to take, where we hook our brain up to the AI computer or whatever, is neutral. No. How could there be any benefit to that? All of this stuff is all about all these values that came after the Enlightenment, men sort of rejecting Christian values inherently and saying we need to have a secular state and all that. And then modernity making things more convenient and more mechanical. All of that isn't feminization. That's a separate thing. So if you're going to talk about improving society, then you can't just say, "Oh, it'll all be fine if we just, make everything masculine." It's like the type of masculinity I'm thinking about, is the one that rejects most of that stuff and is integrated with nature and God. And you'll find that most trad types or conservative women who are genuine Christians and not kind of LARPing, um, they will agree. And I actually think that there's a lot of feminists who will agree too, because they won't like the idea of what the feminine brings to the table being rejected either. Because for all of that stuff to be achieved, that you do have to reject the feminine. Yeah. Whether it's the toxic feminine or just the positive feminine, you still need to reject the feminine. Because the feminine's not really going to gel with this stuff. Not really. I think a woman has to repress the feminine within herself to be really pro colonizing Mars and living in a pod. But how am I going to make a home and breastfeed babies? Or even if I was some careerist feminist, like how is what I bring to the table, for example, going to be appreciated in a pod on Mars? Like, really? I mean, have you thought this through? Anyway, this is not even going into all the other stuff I mentioned in my other video about how they really don't want anything that women bring except just a hole and the ability to have babies. They really do just want to reject the feminine, but they also want to reject the positive masculine too. They want some weird androgynous mechanical thing in the middle. That's what we need to get our head around. Like gynocentrism and feminism have been used to get to this point, and there's also other stuff going on. And I don't quite understand why men um, just seem to be so nonchalant about some of this stuff. And maybe it's because they do have opinions about it and they expect that perhaps they'll have to fight and defend their opinions and ideas at some point. And they don't really want to talk about it because they have to sort of just get along in their hierarchy in the meantime. But I have found a level of apathy in men over the years about different things that I've just found just kind of irritating, I have to say. Um, there are certain archetypes of men who are always more passionate or more willing to speak up about these things, but overall, the mass of men are just kind of go along to get along. Um, and so it's another thing is that I disagree with is this idea that women are more conformist. I just don't see that. Like men like their hierarchy, but they are conforming to a hierarchy. They're conforming and just going along to get along in this hierarchy. So they are conformist too, but in a different way. Why do we have to keep making these arguments that men are this and women are that? It's like, well, maybe men and women do similar things, but in different ways, or they're not manipulated, motivated in different ways. Why do we have to keep presenting it and framing it like this? It's just really jarring. Okay. The next point is this idea that men are more moral, um, which I think I've already spoken about. But there's no real evidence that men are more moral than women overall. In certain arenas, yes, but not in others. Again, just different. Not superior, inferior, moral, more immoral, just different. The next point that I've had a conversation on Twitter about is was about the story of Adam and Eve in Genesis in the Bible. So we've got feminization of society, we've got men are more moral, and then it has led down to conversations about how Eve ate the fruit first and she corrupted Adam. And I've had a few people on Twitter make this claim. One even said that she told Adam, eat the fruit, otherwise you're going to be alone. It doesn't say that in Genesis. It doesn't matter what version of the Bible you look at either. It does not say that Eve said that to Adam. You might interpret that and say, oh, there's some subtext, it's what she did. That's not what it says. Yeah? It doesn't say that in Genesis. It says that she ate the fruit, yeah, and she told Adam to eat the fruit. She offered Adam, said, here, you should eat the fruit. And she stated what the serpent told her, but she did not say, Adam, eat the fruit or you're going to be alone. That is just a projection. And I'm like, guys, come on, let's not. Are you going to make me start doing? Let's do scripture competition, out scripture each other because what? So after having a few conversations with people, I said, now I'm starting to see that you're making this argument that the world has fallen because the feminine nature is fallen, and that is the fallen essence of humanity, is the feminine nature. So I'm like, so how do we go from Eve ate the fruit first to, because Eve ate the fruit, she manipulated Adam, and then because of that, that's why we're fallen? That's not what Genesis says. That's not what most interpretations of Christianity even concludes. But it seems to be within their interest to make this argument right now. And it seems to be just people's emotions and their reaction to feminism, etc., is making them go down this route and line of thinking. I mean, I'm just going to read what the Orthodox perspective is, because it doesn't say that. Orthodox view of Adam and Eve. Adam is traditionally identified as the one ultimately responsible for the introduction of sin into humanity, but in the creation accounts of Genesis, both Adam and Eve are listed as having been created without any sense of subordination of one to the other. Thus, Adam's place is not as a lord over Eve, but rather as the representative of the family. As such, he is her equal, but the introduction of human sin is placed at his feet. And that's from Orthodox Wiki. Okay. So I'm not sure where you got in that little bit there, that therefore humanity's nature is feminine. Fallen nature is feminine, sorry. It doesn't say that. It's just more nuanced than that. And if you read Genesis, after Adam eats the fruit and God comes to him, he hides and he doesn't take responsibility for it. God rebukes both of them. He says to both of them, "You've done wrong, here's your punishment." He doesn't say, because of this woman, and this woman is responsible. He doesn't say that at all. So I'm just like, why? And then some guy on Twitter, and this happens quite a lot, and it's just part of how it is right at the moment. It's very annoying. This guy calls me a feminist. And I said, if I was a feminist, wouldn't I be blaming men? I'm not blaming men. My arguments are always saying it's both sexes. Both sexes have flaws in different ways, and they are complementary, and those flaws work together. We're all flawed, right? That is my argument. Feminists don't make that argument. Feminists blame everything on the patriarchy, aka men. That doesn't make me a feminist. But because I don't want to, agree. I mean, I'm not even 100% sure that this guy agrees with this interpretation of Genesis. He's just reacting, because that's what people do on Twitter. As soon as I say something that's just a little bit challenging, maybe because he wants me to act in a kind of certain manner, be more meek or whatever. And I'm just like, okay, my nature is to have discussions of the level that I'm trying to do now. I'm perfectly like feminine in a certain way. But the thing is, I don't actually think you're going to react any better to what I have actually said. Yeah, if I present it in a hello, I'm so nice and or not nice, it's not the right way of putting it, but just less confrontational. You're still going to disagree with me. I just find it really interesting that a lot of men will say, I have to tell women the truth in tough love, That's like kind of what Pearly Things is all about, right? Where she's going on and on about how I'm just delivering the truth and women just can't handle it and they're too sensitive or whatever. And I'm just like, okay, but if I, as a woman, am just kind of straight up with men and not playing this kind of larpy role of trying to be all demure and quiet, um, then really you should be able just to take what I'm saying. You could say, well, I would prefer it if you communicate this in a certain feminine way. It's like, okay. But they seem to get pretty annoyed and triggered about it really quickly and they go straight into the you're just a Jezebel feminist. It's like, where have I said anything that proves that? I just said that this argument about Eve and Genesis is inaccurate, and I just said that um, you know what else did I say? Yeah, can you counter it? I ask these questions, but I'm basically tone policed, and I'm just like I find this whole thing so funny because um, like if you say things to me and I say, "Oh, I don't like your tone," and I get upset, then I'm told that I'm too sensitive or whatever. Um, and this, I do get it. I've read stuff about submission and stuff about the masculine and feminine principle and essence. I get it. It's just very hypocritical that the way it's used against us in arguments. So this leads me to another interaction I had um, on Discord. I was in a server that's you can go into to join on an online debating channel that I'm not going to name. And I was talking about Pearly Things, and some guy starts arguing with me. He's been quite annoying, but I was being annoying back. But I wasn't insulting him. I wasn't losing my temper. I wasn't saying ad homs or whatever. But the admin is clearly biased, and he made a judgment about me straight away. He didn't question me. He didn't say, "Oh, okay, what are you about?" He just went, "Oh, just calm down. You're nutty and crazy." And I was like, "I haven't said anything that implies I'm nutty or crazy. Can you just like demonstrate how I'm nutty or crazy?" The only thing that possibly is annoying you is that this guy's typing a lot and I'm typing a lot back, and that's taking up space from everyone else to have a chat. That's fair enough. That's not me being nutty or crazy. And then he just sort of makes a bunch of statements, and I'm like, they're just really simplistic statements, and they're just designed to because you're trying to do this red pill splaining lecturing thing, which is also what happens on Twitter. So as soon as they interact with a woman, they think it's a woman. These guys will red pill splain to you, right? They just start going, well, women are hypergamous and women do this and single mothers do that. And I'm like, yeah, I know all of that. Yeah, but you clearly don't understand. I do understand. I was making those arguments years ago, 4 years on the internet. I've done all of this already. I probably know it better than you. Maybe not, but probably, especially if you're younger than me. Um, you are just you want to put me in this box and say, you're a feminist harpy and I must lecture and tell you off. And I just make you feel bad for falling for some feminist hype. Don't you understand that everything is feminist and therefore you're a feminist and whatever? And I'm just like, okay, yeah. Um, it's like you can't have a conversation where you're saying, well, some of these things that you're saying are not quite as simple as that or not quite as black and white as that. Have you considered this? And they're just like, you're a feminist. And I have actually done that to people in the past, and I actually repent about that because Man, it's annoying. Anyway, they have got they've taken in a lot of the red pill manosphere stuff, like hook, line, and sinker, and in their reactionary rage, it's just kind of like they're not ready to have a more interesting discussion. Um, and so therefore they can counter someone who's probably a bit more persistent or annoying like me, then their just brain is just goes. Which brings me to the next point. This argument that women are emotional and men are rational. It's like, okay, so yes, women are more in tune with the sort of emotional state they have. And that's because they're supposed to connect and attach to their husbands and their babies. And this is what keeps everyone together. And they're supposed to have an intuition and attunement for other people so they can nurture them and care for them. It's a benefit that women are like that. And it's used as a pejorative a lot of the time. Sometimes they are literally just trying to educate and say, yes, women are emotional. But most of the time it's used as a pejorative. And it's like, if you're trying to educate me or other women and say, well, you guys are just more emotional, it's like, yeah, I think we all kind of know that. But all right. Um, this idea that you just using it as a pejorative against me or another woman is going to really get me on side. I mean, really? We are made the way we're made for a good, positive reason. Um, so, you know, we can agree that when women's emotionality is used against men in the public sphere, it's frustrating. And it's this one of the things that's contributed to feminization of society. Um, but at the same time, why stop using it as a pejorative? You can say women have a more emotional nature, or they're more in tune with that side of themselves, because they need to use it for a positive benefit to help bring up children and communities. Oops, sorry. And the other thing that's interesting is when you talk to a dating coach, um, they will say women, they don't want to connect with you on an intellectual level. They want to connect to you because they want you to make them feel good, or your emotional state is of benefit to a man. That's what he wants from a woman. And it's like, but then you have these conversations and that is thrown against you as a negative. And I know that the conversation is more nuanced than that, but this isn't what happens with a lot of people who are not very good at understanding dynamics, relationship dynamics. Um, anyway, I don't actually agree that men are inherently more rational. You also get told that men are more logical, which is also false because logic is a skill. Some people have more disposition where they're better at it, but it's a skill that's learned. No one's just born logical. You learn it over time. Both sexes can learn how to be logical. You can say that men have, because they can compartmentalize and they can be more rational in the sense that they can put things aside. They don't have this attunement thing that women have in the same way. That they can become better at it eventually, but that doesn't mean that women can't work on using logic too. I do classical education for my kids, and we will be doing logic at some point in the future as a subject. What am I wasting my time teaching it to my daughters? Like, really? Don't you want your daughters to be more logical? And yeah, I just think it's a little bit of a false red herring when guys say we're more rational, and then 5 minutes later they start losing their mind and calling me a feminist, and I'm like, but that's not a rational response to what I said. You're not really expressing to me that you're more rational at this moment in time. I think that the rational thing is that Men are better at it once they've mastered it than women. But this idea that their nature is more rational is just false. I mean, look how Adam responded in Genesis. Was that rational, what he did? Or was it emotional? I mean, think of the hundreds of stories in the Bible of men giving into passion and temptation. Was that rational? I mean, I think what men tend to be very good at is presenting a decision they made as based on reason, but really it's based on some kind of self-interested emotion, right? And then being kind of calmly, stoically saying, yes, this is blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, no, that's not based on something rational. We have a whole movement, the Enlightenment, based on it. Like they all thought that the Enlightenment was super reasonable and super rational. And it's like, that's not very rational. And we've got Scientism. Are you going to tell me that thinking that the Big Bang was what created the universe is rational? Just, I'm not going to go into apologetics here, but think about it for a second. But the thing is, then when you make a point like that, the man then thinks that you're trying to say that he's like a woman. But no, you're emotional in a way that a man is emotional. That's different to how a woman's emotional. A woman's emotional makeup is different to a man's. Why can't we just talk about how different we are? We're not in competition. And it just keeps being framed that way over and over and over again. And I just don't think you're going to convince a bunch of women, especially the women who are already on your side, who are now really looking at you going, okay, you guys are appeasing, being dismissive or believing Andrew Tate's rubbish, right? You're appeasing stuff that he's said and done just because you want to own a bunch of feminists. That you're being reactionary and you're expecting us on the trad conservative side to go along with you saying that we should take away women's voting rights and then change society in a certain way. You don't have a plan. I know some of the Christian men do, but overall, so this is the other thing about democracy is I don't even remember if I said this at the beginning of the conversation, but um, the masses are not going to vote logically or rationally if they actually had any influence anyway, because they don't, because we have a uniparty that's taking us down the same direction, just in slightly different routes. And we've always had that. It was just covered up better in the past. Now they've revealed what's truly going on. But yeah, I mean, it just takes 10 to 15% of men, I suppose, who would be the ones who would be pro all the stuff that, the trads want, the trad women want. But I don't know, you've got to kind of convince us that you're going to achieve that. And I don't really want to be like, oh, you guys got to man up and you got to show us and impress us. And it's like, no. I mean, no one wants to impress me. I mean, I know I'm not a woman that they, but I do care about this whole situation because I have kids and I want to make sure that I've done my part. Um, so it's like a balance between wanting to sit back and let the men take care of it, but at the same time, we have to we have to back up the right kinds of men. And I don't know at what point I'll be like, okay, yeah, that's enough of the right kind of men now. All right, cool, great. Whew. Yeah, don't have to say anything anymore. I can just get on with doing my womanly stuff or whatever. We're not at that point yet, especially when everyone is sticking up for Andrew Tate. What? And when everyone is falling for Pearl, who also supports Andrew Tate, it's like, yeah, she could say some anti-feminist things that I agree with, and then she says lots of silly things. If you've been following her on Twitter, I've been responding to her on Twitter as well. Oh my gosh, she just needs to zip it sometimes. And I'm saying that as a woman who talks too much. When she did that video the other day about all these fake trad women, and I'm like, so there's a bunch of women who are trying to be more trad life now, and you're just shiting on them, saying that because they didn't get married before a certain age and they've only got 2 kids, that they're not trad. I mean, how is this purity spiraling going to help anyone? You should be thankful that they recognize and maybe have repented and they're trying to do the right thing. At what point does it matter what age they did that at? If they are genuine about it, then be thankful and thank God for that. It's just a whole big game that I can't stand watching, really. It's just destructive. We all need a bit more compassion with each other. It's like we're both men and women have been victims of just intensive propaganda for a very long time, and we just need to just say, hey, sociopaths are good at what they do. The devil is good at what he does. Let's just admit that. Stop trying to blame each other. It's your fault, it's your fault. It's like we're both at fault. We can talk about flaws, but the fault just needs to just move on. There are people that are going to never have families and they're just going to live their life and be miserable or whatever. And like, why would you want to wish that on the majority of one sex or the other? It, anyway, now I'm just going off on a tangent. I'm going to finish this video with something that I found on Twitter what I liked. So this is from, I have to credit the lady. This is from Philosophy Cat. I think she's, oh no, maybe I need to bring the screen. Can I do that? No. Right. Is it going to go white if well, I'm just going to read it. It doesn't matter because you don't. This is a tweet from Philosophy Cat. And she is like a pagan, but I thought this was quite wise. And I know there's some people who are Christian who say similar stuff, but I saw this recently and I liked it and thought it was applicable to what I've been talking about. So she says, it's not all about fault, and I wish people would stop framing it that way. We all have a responsibility to be the best men and women we can be. But men are the only ones who can fully embody the active masculine principle and are therefore the only ones with the ability to initiate the change. Asking or demanding that women who embody the passive feminine principle take on the role of the active principle is how women become Amazons. So the context is that she was talking about how she's noticed that there are a lot of sort of conservative women who are making feminist light points because they're in reaction to a lot of this manosphere bro stuff on Twitter or on social media. And she's saying that they're in danger of becoming Amazons. She's using this she's using like Greek myths and other folklore to explain this, okay? Whether men demand openly that they do it or men simply behave in ways that force women to do it as a default, the result is the same. Any man demanding that women fix a problem is just asking to be longhoused. Now, I'm sure some of you know what the longhouse is now. Because that is the only solution women can offer when forced to try to uphold a principle that they are unable to wield. This is a fundamental principle of the cosmos. Sorry if some people don't like the rules, but playing by those rules is the only path to victory. So she's talking in response, because she wrote this tweet thread which was about this, And she was saying that in response to someone who's saying, "Oh, look, you're just blaming men again. It's all men's fault." Well, she's not saying that. She's just saying that uh, basically men have the ones who have to take action. And I've said this before in the sense that you want a benevolent patriarchy and a patristic tradition, where I'm coming from in the Orthodox world. We need a patristic tradition and we need a benevolent patriarchy that is rooted in the church. If men do that, and they take the lead, women will follow. Women followed feminism, which was promoted by a bunch of men, funded by a bunch of men. That's not saying that there were not evil women involved, and that there wasn't a level of misandry in society that they could take hold of, because there's always been misogyny and misandry. I mean, we're flawed. So, um, but she's just saying that men sitting back just whining, like when the MRA start talking about how if we give women, make women sign up for Selective Service and they have to sign up for the draft, then all wars will end. And it's like, do you seriously think that's going to happen? What? I mean, come on. At this point, the elites do not care about women. They never have. Uh, this has all just been a tool to get us to a point where they can promote this new direction where we can all become this weird androgynous cyborg thing that is no longer human, male, female. So, the other thing she said in her other tweets was that women always want a man who provides a kind of solid, stable base. And then when she finds that, she will back down and let him lead. And I'm just giving you examples of men that are not providing a stable, solid, stoic base. They just are just as reactionary and emotional as women are, or worse. So, like, I watched a clip of Fresh and Fit video with Myron, with a bunch of ladies from Colombia, and they were making some points. There was one lady in particular, and she was very calm and collected throughout. And this guy just got triggered by something she said and just was like, "No, don't interrupt me." And then he just went off, and he just sounded like one of those, Karens that's going off and telling you off. Not sound very masculine or gentlemanly like at all. Um, so I suppose this is me giving it back to men in that sense. But it's not because I'm saying that women are better than men or that women don't have any problems. I'm saying that you sort out your stuff, women will sort out theirs, and we come together. We don't need to go like we're in a Western saloon. Who's going to shoot first? Standing there with our holsters and our hands and our guns and just going until then, while all the young people destroy things and follow Andrew Tate, right? So, um, let me know what you think. I hope that this rambling has made sense. And I just want to reiterate that men and women are just as flawed as each other in different ways. We need to stop this blame game. And we can talk about the flaws that men have, the flaws that women have, without feeling the need to put the one side down. Yeah. And I really try to do that. And then I get called a feminist for trying to do that. So I'm going to work on it. I'm going to try and tweak how I say things so I stop getting this reaction. But you also, guys, you've got to try not to react and think. Just slow down And if anyone wants to debate me about it, I'd love to live up to the challenge. I was actually trying to debate a couple of people the other day. I said I would, but then I sort of dropped the idea because I'm so pregnant. So it's really difficult to say, yeah, 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 and then tomorrow I could give birth. Probably not a good time to be doing it. But at the same time, a good time to do it because, um, as I said before, I'm not doing as much as I normally do. Anyway, that's a me problem. But yeah, what I'm saying is I'm willing to have a discussion with people about it. I'm not really gonna like I'm not gonna become this kind of um you're not gonna get some kind of bloopers out of me, you know? If you want to have a conversation and have a nice debate or discussion, that's cool. But, you know, there's enough drama in the world. Let's just be peaceful as much as we can be. Anyway, I think that's almost an hour, so I'm going to go. Um, Again, the feminization of society is not our only problem. We have the mechanization of society, transhumanism, technocracy, which all appeal to men more than they appeal to women. I really think they do. And men have to address that stuff as also being a negative force on humanity. And if you're going to start making arguments about voting rights, then you have to talk about how flawed democracy is, how we have a uniparty in the West, how the international elite has always used democracy against us. I know it's just a point to own the libs or whatever and make women feel, a certain way. But we're not in 2016 anymore. We're in 2023. We kind of need to grow up, present the argument properly, if you even know what you're talking about. Third is that men are not more moral than women. There's no evidence to support that, and that isn't what God says. God did not create man as more moral than woman. And also, uh, the it's not all women's fault and women's nature's fault that humanity has fallen. It's both sexes. God makes that quite clear in Genesis. And throughout the Bible, women are given advice and they talk about the flaws of women, but then we also have immense stuff about the flaws of men. And don't cherry pick scripture just to do that. And don't assume that me or another woman is a feminist who doesn't understand any of this context just because we're pointing some of this out. I don't want to point this out. I would like to spend my time doing something else, but I'm disappointed in y'all. And I just want to contribute to the solution. If this is what needs to happen to contribute to the solution, then this is my contribution. I don't know. Yeah. And blah blah blah. Oh yeah. And if you want to argue with me about Pearl or whoever, like you're really letting yourself down when you start acting like a chauvinist and saying you are nutty and crazy. And it's like, no, I haven't said anything that has made anyone think that about me. It's just really strange if you're trying to present yourself as more rational. Um, so please stop doing that. All right, take care. God bless. Bye bye.